Happy Saturday, everyone. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon. We have lovely weather. We have strong breeze. But it's beautiful. It's different, right? Because we had jumped from winter, well, semi-winter, and then we went straight to summer. So I think we're trying to get a little balance of spring, a little taste of spring. So I'm gonna just savor it. Even though it's kind of like we're almost having a hurricane too with the winds today, not understanding, but we give thanks and praise for whatever we get, right? So, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Caribbean Diaspora Vibes. My name is Donna Morton Morgan, and I'm your host for this evening. And our co host tonight is the one and only Fabulous Dr. Bavon Debrio.
Hey.
And hey, Dr. Bev.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome again. Nice seeing everyone. Back for another educational format.
Yes.
Folks was talking about last week. Oh, they didn't know a lot of things. So I'm so glad that we have these experts and professionals and individuals who are so willing to share with us. And thanks to our viewers and our listeners. We truly appreciate this.
Yes, we couldn't do it without our professionals, from whether they're from the Caribbean or America or just abroad, just coming on and sharing their time and their expertise. Want to big up Sybil. Hey, Sybil.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be back on. Looking forward to today.
Yes. And I see that Beverly Debrio's on looking fabulous. As she's always outside, wherever Beverly's always outside with sunshine, living the Florida life for real. All right. So, guys, today we're going to be talking about child abuse. We have a very special guest for you, child abuse prevention. We want to welcome you this evening to Marynell Bryant. And, we had her on actually last year. And so she is one of our designated professionals and expert on this topic. And we want to thank her for joining us. And hey, Arlene, Dr. Arlene, looking fabulous as usual. We have our co-hosts. We have several co-hosts now, right? Yes. So Marynell Bryant, just give us a little snippet about who you are, where you're from, right? We always have to represent the flag, and then we'll go right into you telling us about child abuse prevention, because April is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month.
Absolutely. My name is Marynell Bryant. I am from the island of Dominica in the West Indies. I've been living in the United States for about 39 years, so I've been living here for a very long time. Currently, I work in the field of child welfare. I've been working in the field of child welfare for a little over 20 years. I work in my current position as a supervisor. So what I do is when cases come in for child abuse and neglect, do an assessment and provide services to put everything that's needed in place to minimize the risk and to prevent it. Hopefully, that's the goal. So this being Child Abuse Awareness Month, I just want to discuss some of the different ways children are being abused, how we can identify it, and what we can do to prevent it. So I will start. What is child abuse? And it's many different definitions, but it all means the same thing. Any intentional or mistreatment of a child under 18 years old is considered child abuse. And child abuse can take on many forms, which often can occur at the same time. The most common that we all know about is physical abuse. Physical abuse occurs when a child is purposely physically injured or put at risk of harm by another person. Then we have sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is any sexual activity with a child, such as fondling, oral genital contact, intercourse, exploitation, or even exposing a child to pornography. Then we have emotional abuse. Emotional abuse means injuring a child's self-esteem or emotional well-being. It includes the verbal and emotional assault, such as continuing belittling or berating a child, as well as isolating or ignoring or rejecting a child. Then we have medical abuse. Medical abuse occurs when someone gives false information about illness in a child that requires medical attention, putting the child at risk of injury or unnecessary medical care. Neglect. Child neglect is failure to provide adequate food, shelter, affection, supervision, education, dental, or medical care. So we see all of this on a regular basis pretty much. And child abuse is pretty much very common. Statistic tells us that 1 in 7 children are abused pretty much every day. So it's very common, and every state do have a department or organization that deals with child abuse and neglect. So when we look at physical abuse, we look at children not being cared for. We look at children might be coming to school or being seen in the community with their hair looking matted. We look at children that have scrapes and bruises that cannot be explained, or explaining does not match what the symptoms that they exhibit. Because sometimes you will see that the parent will say, oh, the child fell off the bed or bumped into the cabinet, but when the child is seen, the injury does not match the explanation. We see a lot of children coming to school, maybe late, can't focus, can't get their work done. And it's a lot of different reasons that's going on at home, including children being exposed to domestic violence in the home, children in an environment that's not conducive to their functioning. You know, you have situations where the home is unkept. We see that a lot. Home is unkept, a lot of hoarding, a lot of, poor hygiene in the home. A lot of times you have families that have animals. They have cats and dogs, and we have the stench of, like, the dogs or the cat maybe urinate on the children's clothing, and they go to school and then they get ridiculed because they don't smell right. Just want to share, I think it was last week, I went to a client's home, and one of the information that came in was that there was poor hygiene because the children's clothing smelled like cat urine. When I got there, I definitely smelled the urine. So the client is saying to me, oh, my kids' clothes are clean. Look at them, the clothes are clean, because she's been in that environment with the smell. It becomes normal to her. So she can't really smell it anymore. She gets desensitized to the smell of the urine. However, when the kids come to school, other kids could smell it, and then they are being teased and they're having a hard time making friends, and emotionally that affects their self-esteem. So a child who is being abused may feel guilty, ashamed, or confused. He or she may be afraid to tell anyone about the abuse, especially if the abuser is a parent, and we see that a lot. Children are very protective of their parents. No matter how small they are extremely protective of their parents. So they are not going to tell of what's happening in their home. They might not want to share with other relatives or friends. And that is why it's vital as professionals, teachers, hospital employees, people in the community, that we need to watch out for red flags. Some of the red flags is children withdrawing from friends and activities, change in behavior, such as they may become aggressive, angry, hostile, or very hyper, or changes in school performance with grades and just doing homework and all these things that when they have a difficult time really not performing where they should be. A lot of times with kids that are abused, we see a lot of depression and anxiety, unusual fears. Suddenly they lost self-confidence. And one of the things that I know, especially growing up in the Caribbean, is that we talk a lot about spoiling children, children being spoiled. And even in the early ages, I think Erik Erikson, his theory on psychosocialization, talks about trust and mistrust. And sometimes it happened in that early phase where it happens between newborns to 12 to 18 months, where they're going to trust the environment they're in or not trust the environment they're in. So it's called trust and mistrust. So we know when babies are young, they cannot speak, they cannot ask for anything. So we know most of the times they communicate, even all the time, they communicate by crying. So if a child is hungry, they cry. If they are wet and need changing, they cry. If they're cold or hot or want some kind of blanket or probably take a blanket off or everything, they cry. They want to be held, they cry. When they're crying, if there is no response, like their caretakers, their mom, their dads, or whoever, grandma, aunties, whoever are taking care of them, if they're not being responded to, they tend to learn that they cannot trust the environment around them. So it starts very early. So I personally don't believe there is any such thing as spoiling a child, because obviously they cannot speak. So they are crying because they're probably hungry. So if you let them cry and cry and cry and don't feed them, what they're going to learn as they grow up is that I cannot trust my environment. I cannot trust my caretakers to take care of me. Does anybody have any questions or want to add anything or say anything at this point?
You know, that's so interesting because, especially as Caribbean families, we hear that all the time. Stop spoiling the child. Stop, and so yeah, so you think that okay, if you lift the baby up, or every time he cries, that you're doing something wrong, and well, it tugs at your heart, first of all, as moms, more so probably than dads. But um we didn't even equate it with that child is building trust. Wow.
Yeah. So that starts at a very early age, from newborn to between 12 to 18 months, because the communication is always through crying and fussing. So when they do that, they're actually asking for a need to be met, because they can't speak. Like we could say, like as the kids get older, they could say, I want some more juice, or I want some water, I'm thirsty, or I'm hungry, or I want a blankie, or I want something. And babies do that all through crying, right? So we want to really be knowledgeable that even at that young age, we could be causing irreparable harm. So we want to be so careful about that. Children who are abused and neglected may suffer physical injuries, as we know, such as cuts, bruises, broken bones. As I mentioned about emotional abuse and psychological abuse, this is what caused a lot of anxiety and post-traumatic stress. You can see that if you are in a classroom, or even if a social worker visits a family, you walking by or you just reach over to get a pen and the child flinches, defensive, We have to be, observant of that as teachers in the classroom or after school or whatever activities that you interact with children, to see how they respond as you move around. Because if they're always hit at home, every time they see a hand passes, they're going to jump, or you're trying to reach for something. So you want to notice that as something that might be doing to protect themselves. Children, some of the we might ask ourselves, how big is the problem? It is a very big problem, because child abuse and neglect is very common, as I mentioned earlier. Then we have children that are living in poverty experiences more child abuse and neglect. And we know why that would be, because when a family is living in poverty, they are under a lot of stress. The sun just came in. They are under a lot of stress, financial stress. Maybe they're living in smaller spaces and they don't have that privacy. They don't have that one-on-one. So they are very, very quick to lash out on a kid for any little reason. So we know that risk increases a lot. Rates of child abuse and neglect are 5 times higher in families who have low income, low socioeconomic status. So we want to be mindful of the children that we come in contact with and look for red flags. Look at some of the issues they might be exhibiting that could show that they are going through some kind of difficulty with at home that could lead to them being abused. A few weeks ago, we had a case came in, because I'm working in the field, so I see this like regularly. We had a case came in, and this is a mom. She has a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby. So the 14-year-old and the 16-year-old were being abused by her husband, who are not the children's father, and the 16-year-old became pregnant for the husband. So here it is in this family. She has the 16-year-old who has a 1-year-old for her stepdad, and mom has a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old. I think he's around 10-month-old now at this time. And mom is not believing that this occurred, even if it's proof that this 1-year-old is the father of her husband, the child's father. So there are a lot of ways that kids are not being believed. And one of the big issues is supervision. How are children being supervised? Who are supervising children? This is one of the big issues that we have. That people and individuals, they just leave their children in the care of people they don't know. Or they look at the flags, but they dismiss it because it's a very hard thing to accept. Like, this is something that people are in denial about, because accepting it means that you have to do something about it, that you have to, make decisions that are very difficult. So one of the things that we want to be mindful about is what sexual abuse is. And it starts with grooming, children being, sitting on laps, being treated special and want to be taken out for snacks and stuff like that. I'm not saying that you are not supposed to trust your partner, but you are supposed to pay attention, because this is not something that happens once in a while. This is something that happens very frequently. Does anybody want to add anything or say anything or ask any questions?
One would like to add to that?
Or ask any questions?
Let me see if any questions on Facebook.
Okay, maybe you can describe for us a little about how not only the child is being groomed, but how the entire family is being groomed. Because these individuals who commit molestation, they groom the entire family. So can you give us some different ways in which the entire family is being groomed?
Well, a lot of ways. And one of the ways that you might see often. It happens most likely to single parent families. So you might have a mom that is a single parent, and she meets this individual that wants to be part of her life, wants to be part of the children's life. So obviously it will start out with them being a very big help to the family, help to the mom. You also have intact families like mom, dad, and they might be going to a church. They might be, going to the school meetings together, and that they become so friendly with the teacher, the counselor, the pastor, whoever it is that they interact with. They might be very concerned about their welfare, offer them counseling, offer them leisure time with the children, in a position, placing themselves in a position to have this child to do activities with. So sometimes they do groom the whole family by befriending them, engaging them in family activities to gain their trust, to eventually single out who they want to single out within that family.
Mm.
So it happens that way also.
Yes, you mentioned earlier about just watching the child's behavior, if they flinch, if you're reaching over to them. So observing even those small little details. Because children, like you said, children will protect. They don't want to see mom or dad get in trouble.
Right. So it's always important to know who your child caregivers are. A lot of times we trust, but there's everything that's out there, even the background of our clergy, the teachers, the doctors, everybody is public information. If we do a background check, we could find them, because especially if they are public employees, information is out there. So it's important that we do check to see who the people that are around our children, even if we go to a church, to check who their background, what their background is. So sometimes we want to look at parent behavior to see the parents, because we all are parents and we interact with parents. And don't believe because the parents you interact with have degrees and higher education that they don't abuse, because hurt people hurt people. And we have a lot of parents who have trauma in their childhood, but went on and were able to have a career, but haven't healed from that childhood trauma, haven't gotten therapy, but went on to have families of their own without being healed. So sometimes we believe that, okay, this person is a social worker, they're a teacher, they're a nurse, they're a doctor, and whatever it is. So we trust them and we don't look at the red flags. But if we care about children and we want to protect children, we have to look at everyone that interacts and how they interact with the children, and stop saying children are rude instead of looking at what they are suffering. Sometimes a parent demeanor or behavior sends red flags about child abuse. Some of the warning signs include show a little concern for the child. Everybody know this is a rude kid, so I'm not going the extra mile. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that because the kid is rude. So they show a little concern for the child. Appears unable to recognize physical and emotional distress in the child. Blames the child for problems. The teacher calls, the Sunday school teacher call, the neighbor call, and it's always blaming the child for everything. Constantly belittle or berates the child and describe the child with negative terms such as you are worthless, you are bad. I mean, this is stuff we hear all the time. And sometimes it's come across like surfacey, we just saying these things, but children are molding and they can't really differentiate many times between when we are just saying something out of frustration or if you saying it with meaning. So watching your behavior as a parent or watching other parents' behaviors is something that we have to pay close attention to. Expecting the child to provide him or her with attention and care and seems jealous of other family members getting attention from the child. Using harsh discipline demands an inappropriate level of physical or academic performance. Like we know the famous go-to, it's like, oh, you got 95, what happened to other 5%, right? We could refer to that. Severely limits the child connection with others. That happens a lot. A lot of parents don't want their kids to have friends. They want to keep them isolated from others. Offers conflict and unconvincing explanation for child injuries or no explanation at all. One thing that we have to be mindful of is that children need to be protected at all times. And we in the community are the eyes and ears of children.
Right.
When we see something, as the slogan said, we want to say something, we want to intervene. Every state have a hotline that you could call anonymously. And what most people need to understand is that you don't have to be 100% sure that this child is being abused. You are not the investigator. You just have to be uncomfortable that something is going on that you need to be checked out. So you don't have to know for sure. Nobody's expecting you to know for sure. The experts will go in and they will do an assessment and they will ask the appropriate questions to know whether there is abuse or not. So your job really, as us in the community who are not mandated reporters, even those of us who are mandated reporters, we just have to be suspecting something might be going on and let the professionals and the investigators go and ask the questions to find out. One of a question that people ask all the time, how old it is a child has to be left home alone? And there is no age pretty much. I mean, most states, the majority of the states doesn't have an age limit. Some states, I think Maryland said 8 years old. I think Illinois said about 14 years old, but most states do not have an age limit. But children 7 and under should not be left alone at any time. Even if the child is in the backyard playing, you should not be in the house and the kid is in the backyard, because if an intervention needs to happen, something go wrong, you need to be there. So children 7 and under should not be left in cars, not be left in playgrounds or backyard. Even if you are inside, they need to be always under supervision. Children 8 to 10 should not be left alone for more than a half an hour to an hour and a half. And that's only during the daytime. And that's recommendation, because we know that we have to also look at maturity level. Last week, we talked about autism. So we know a child who is autistic might not be able to be left alone even into adulthood, like an individual even into adulthood. So we know that when we're looking at these ages, they are just guidelines, but we have to look at the maturity level, the environment in which we are leaving children in. So kids between the age of 8 to 10, as I said, should not be left for more than a half an hour to an hour and a half, and that's only during the daytime or early evening. 11 or 12 may be left alone for up to 3 hours, but again, that's during the daytime. And really not leaving them to be responsible for a younger sibling, like a 2-year-old or 1-year-old. We have to be mindful that 11 to 12-year-old doesn't have what it takes to even take care of themselves in an emergency most of the time. We do see the exception, but that's the exception. So we want to be mindful. 13 to 15-year-old may be left unsupervised, but not overnight. However, 16 to 17-year-olds can be left overnight, maybe for at least 2 nights, without an adult supervising them during that time. Do we have any questions before I go on?
You know, the time frames, I think, well, you know, we do live in a different time, but I know back home we were left so early. I don't know if anybody can testify to that, but we were left so early. But, you know, I think we were exceptional too, because it was like this responsibility that we had, and we, you know, it's different. We were latchkey. I know my kids were latchkey kids, but again,
Donna, you probably weren't left alone because we had a community.
we had a
Your
community,
grandmother lived in
right?
the yard, your auntie lived next door. It was
Right.
the whole village. It's, you know, the time was different. The strictness, the responsibility of the kids today and the kids back then. But
Right.
we couldn't disrespect a neighbor. We couldn't do the things that are done today, or the
Mhm.
neighbor, or vice versa, because they have some neighbor that would see kids and violate them as well. But back then, it's not to saying these things weren't happening either. Sometimes I look back and I think of it, and I look at the age of when adults were having kids. Good job. When adults were having kids, and they were pretty young, but it was the norm. It was the norm. So these things were happening. The education weren't there. The knowledge weren't there. So it's a lot of different ways of looking at abuse.
Yeah.
I have a question.
I wanted to add something about the background check, and you mentioned the churches. Uh, what I have come to understand is a lot of states give religious exemptions for background check. So if you're in a religious institution, if your child is going to certain religious institutions, schools, churches, you want to make sure what the laws are in that state, because a lot of those people within those institutions may have no background check because they are under an exemption.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So,
Somebody have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. What advice do you have to give to those parents? Because we know there's a lot of single parents, for example, that are raising children on their own, and they have maybe a lot of angst happening inside of their families. Um, Speaking on the topic of child abuse, when a mother alone is not equipped to handle what she is going through, she may have 2 or 3 kids or even more. Maybe the father is not there anymore. Maybe he walked out on them, and she's dealing with so much. Instead of turning her over to social services or whatever, what advice would you give to the mother who might be listening today? Maybe a little tip or how they can deal with something to help them deal better with the children, how what they can look for, the signs. I know you spoke about it before, but how can she, as a single mother, try to do better to help her children? Because we know there's all this, like mental health stuff happening right now. So what can she do to be a better mother to her children?
One of the things that parents can do is seek help. Even with the school, even with churches, there's a lot of support out there. But before that, they have to be engaged with someone that they could trust, because there are a lot of parents who don't trust social services system. They don't even trust in telling the schools because they are scared that they're going to call social services for them. So what I would advise parents to do is find someone that you are comfortable with speaking to. It could be somebody in your community, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. And you could look at your state that you're living in. And there is a lot of stuff online that you could go to find out resources for your family that does not have to include child welfare or the authorities coming in. So that's one thing I would encourage parents to do when they are frustrated, because believe me, if you are a frustrated parent, there is another parent that's going through the same thing. You go to drop off your kids at school, you go to drop your kids off at football or dance class or activities and you are going through a lot of difficulties, you speak to someone and ask for help, because there are a lot of people out there that are willing to help. But sometimes pride take control and we don't want to let people in for them to feel that we don't have it together. You see, we live in a society that we all want to pretend that we have it together and we are struggling. And I just think that parents out there should speak to someone that they trust. And that's how they could get the ball rolling to get the support that they need.
Also, one of the things I know that have been, the children are being told from schools and so on, if they have any problems, just, like call 911 or, and it does not always help the situation. It might help them for a day or two or a week or so, but if the situation will continue. So my reason for asking this is, if a mother is listening, she should know to reach for help, because it's not about her at the moment, it's about the children. And if she cannot help herself, she cannot help her kids. But if the children also are calling 911 or the teachers are reporting them, it also compounds the problem.
Right, but let me just say something, because sometimes that's the opening for help to get into a family. If 911 is called, if something is going on in the home and 911 is called, there's going to be an investigation. And if there is nothing that raises to the level, then there is nothing that's going to be a consequence to the family. They might just put in like a supportive service in place just to help them. Because a lot of these services that get put in place, some of them are voluntary. It's giving the parents the chance to attend a parenting class. But sometimes we have parents who say, this is my third child, this is my fourth child, I know how to parent. Because a lot of people believe once you have a roof over somebody's head and you have food to feed them, that you are parenting. They have clothes and you are parenting. So they're losing out on the emotional and psychological needs of their children, which have long-term effects. So they have to understand that if 911 is called, it might seem to be a serious situation, but once the police come in, they refer the case to social services. Social services is going to do an assessment. And if there is not a big deal, so to speak, then there is really no consequence. There is just support put in that place. Because one thing I know for sure, especially in New York, there is no, they're not trying to take people's children away, simply because there is not even the amount of foster parents in place to take kids away. So they really put a lot of support in the home to maintain children in the home. They have workers going to the home. I mean, a parent could ask me for a daycare voucher today and they get it tomorrow, and just go to any provider to get daycare in place if they want an after school program. This stuff is like readily available. So these are the stuff that people is going to get. They're going to get the support that they need.
Beverly, you had something to say. I'm going to go down the list. We thank you. Just let us pause for a moment there. It's a lot to digest, and folks are asking questions, which is very meaningful.
So, yes, as far as being a single parent can do just as well as a two couple parent. Their studies have shown you need one good parent, so you don't need two parents. If you have two, good for you, but if you have to do it by yourself, you should reach out for help. Try to get into a parenting class, because that may be a cost-effective way of finding help. And you really need to find things that you can do in terms of discipline that does not include or even come near close to abuse. Because one of the things we have done over the past years, uh, the most recent years, we have been able to get the word out about child abuse and how this affects children. But what we haven't been really good at is giving parents the tools on what they need to do. So you need to find the tools on what you need to do. Instead of yelling, shouting, screaming, punishing, putting down? What are some alternatives? Once you have those alternatives, that's your toolbox.
Right.
And once you have a good toolbox, then you can get the job done. But just to tell parents, stay away from abuse and not to replace the tools. That's what we've done mostly. So I want to encourage you to get the tools. What are the alternatives to parents?
So that's absolutely true, because you cannot take away something and don't replace it with something else. If you taken away the corporal punishment, then you have to replace it with something else, because parents at the end of the day have to discipline. As you said, you could have a two-parent couple household and it's so much chaos there that the kids could be worse off than in a single parent household. So that I could attest to, because I've experienced having been a single parent and being in a single parent household and also raising two daughters as a single parent, and have done well by them and well for myself. So I could I could definitely attest to that. I want to go over some of the signs of sexual abuse you want to notice, but I just want to talk about what Beverly mentioned earlier about the tools of helping parents. One of the things that we encourage parents to do is to create routines. So in the evening time, have a routine in the evening of how you're going to get your kids to bed, or what your nighttime routine look like. And also in that nighttime routine, you want to prepare for a morning routine, because we know that getting children ready in the morning, they can't find their belt for their pants is like a minute seems like 5 minutes. They can't find a socks. They can't find a whatever it is they're looking for, undershirt, whatever. So we want to, in the evening, prepare to the point where you put the pants to the belt to the loops of the pants, the undershirt, the underwear, the socks, everything, because it's just the simplest thing that could turn a morning into chaos. When that arrives, the kids, they wind up going to school stressed out because of the frustration just getting out the door. Sometimes without breakfast, sometimes the last thing they hear from their parents is something vile and negative. You're so stupid. How many times I have to tell you to put your bag in the place, put your sweater, it just happens like that. So one of the things we try to tell parents is have a routine where you organize stuff at night. Because I have gone to homes where you see parents have no nighttime routine, no morning routine, and stuff is in chaos. Children just fall out anywhere. They fall asleep. The bottom of their feet is black like tar. A nighttime routine would include maybe taking a bath, reading a bedtime story, just taking the volume down, because so many things that we ask them to do to create that routine, collaborate with parents to create a routine that could lessen the stress that's going to lead to having outbursts in the morning and having stressful time in the morning. So that's one of the things that we try to encourage parents to do.
Miss Marynell, I know you were gonna go back into sexual abuse before we took that little break. Some of the viewers just want to say great job talking about the background check for the pastors, whether or not their church does that. Also, we have folks saying that sometimes it takes much longer for therapy and services and evaluation to even take place right here in Florida. So those are some. I don't want the viewers to think that we're not listening or and she's in New York, and I do understand the Florida situation. Sometimes I feel like that is one of those agencies that is not effective. They don't have enough. Like Miss Marynell say, after you call them and there is nothing. There is no follow through. There is no. She's saying that services are provided in some cases in New York, whether it's a voucher or a daycare or some kind of assistance. But folks here are saying that they don't see that immediate impact or that help that comes in. Once they say there's nothing happening in the home, there is no check. They're not following up enough. Okay, that one time you came, something might have happened. So it's now been overlooked, or the services, the observation is not, and the evaluation is not happening fast enough. And I do understand that.
Right.
And
So
I,
what parents can do is also follow up, because remember, the system is huge and they are putting out fires everywhere. They are stretched beyond capacity. So what neighbors need to do, families need to do, is call. Everybody has a supervisor. Even the director of the agency have the mayor who they answer to. People have to be consistent in making calls to really get an answer, because sometimes if it's not serious enough, they do dismiss that. That is dismissed, and it could be very frustrating and also be very detrimental. So keep on being consistent, seeking the services for whatever state you are in, and that's how you're going to get answers. You have to be consistent.
Can you guys hear me now?
Hi, Yoki.
Hello, guys. I'm being on the phone, and I mean, for some reason, I'm sorry. I've been on from even the beginning. I was on in the first one when the host first started, but I just couldn't hear. I heard you guys, but you couldn't hear me, so I had to reach out. But I'm on, but I've been on, and I've been listening to the discussion about child abuse, and it's a very interesting topic. And I mean, it should be 12 months instead of 1 month per year, you know, because that's something that happens every single day, as Marynell was mentioning. And just to introduce myself, everyone. My name is Yoki Kona. I'm a friend of Marynell. Used to supervise me. We met through a job, became friends, and I'm also a victim of child abuse. And I also work in the field. So I got somewhat two aspect of it. And the long-term effect that I find as a survivor of abuse, and my abuse was my biological father, sexual abuse. And it always start with trust. You know, they kind of gain your trust to the point that if you tell or say something to someone else, another adult friend, whomever, you kind of feel guilty. So they make you feel guilty, and guilt. I wouldn't say trouble, be guilt at first. You start feeling guilty because they're so nice to you, and then turn into abuse. So that you start feeling bad if you say something. But as an adult, what I find that your trust level, it becomes very thin. You know, you don't trust too much, but yeah, you're very vulnerable because it makes you feel as though you're not worthy of being loved and treated. Matter of fact, sometimes when the abuse is so expensive, it's so the extent of it is so harmful that you have no self love, self trust. You just feel like you're supposed to be at an abuser um, way that he or she can abuse you, and then necessarily has to be the opposite from the sex you're dealing with. It could be a female or a male with a female. It just you just become so vulnerable to people, and then after a while, you kind of like just get into yourself to a way that you're not trusting anyone, and everything you see, you kind of prejudge people to protect yourself. And if you don't get the proper help, which could be counseling or having someone that listen or believe you or try to protect you, you know, it can go into you abusing your children. I think Marynell has covered that too, because because that's all you know.
Right.
And it does start from an infancy level because children born with first you're in your mother's stomach for 9 months, and that's all you know. You've been protected. So when you come out, I believe the infants believe they have to be, they have to trust somebody, and that's their parent, as the first people that's in their life. And they don't, if they don't get that in the home, when they hit the street or go out in the world, they become very vulnerable for a lot of other abuse. And what I find is the mental abuse, because the physical abuse somewhat kind of heals, whether it's a mark or a black eye, or, it heals, but the emotional abuse can take a lifetime if you don't have the proper training, the proper support, people in your corner that tell you it's not your fault, because we tend to believe it. In my case, I believe that it was my fault for a long time into adulthood. For in my case, how I handled it was I was not trustworthy to any man. So I have two daughters. They're both adults. And what I found myself is, it's like I didn't bring no man around them. And I was married once, and that was the only man they been around, because I was not with the father. My second child, I adopted her. So my first daughter, I was not with her dad. So when I got married, I didn't trust my husband for a long time, and that made him feel so uncomfortable, to the point that he was not comfortable being around my daughter. And that relationship kind of spoke, and my daughter didn't get the opportunity to see the great person he was, and he passed away. And so, you know, it takes a lot. So for me, I became a social worker, because I felt that, what I went through, I didn't get too much help. I mean, when I was growing up, I ended up in the system because of my abuse. So that became resentful for me, so I didn't really get the help that I thought I got when I was younger. Just send you to therapy and all that stuff. But if it's a lifelong healing, and if you don't do it every day, like getting up every morning and praying, you kind of fall short, and you find yourself back in abusive relationship. So to say all that is, it is a lot of help out there. Just what we're doing right now on the phone, talking to each other and sharing information and sharing it with others that's not online, a family member. That's a part of it. And I think a sister on the line said something about a village. It does take a village. I mean, I grew up in Africa, but that same village can be abusive. And, I grew up in Liberia, and it was a village. And once again, I was abused by my stepfather. So it started for me at a young age. So yes, that really do protect you and guide you, and supposed to. But what we definitely need to do is find ways, like these kind of conversations, going to places and talking to our young people, that you can heal. You can heal by sharing your story, because there's a lot of young people I come across that's been abused, and they're not even speaking about it. And then when they become adults, it kind of come out. So I mean, I think I'm going on and on. So if I don't want to chat in and ask question or make a comment, feel free. But it's a very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. They end at 7. I just wanted to just take another 1 or 2 minutes just to talk about the physical signs of child sexual abuse, what parents could look out for. Sexually transmitted diseases, trauma to the mouth, stain or bloody underclothing or bruises, bleeding or discharge in the genital areas, swelling, itching, or pain in the genital areas, difficulty walking, sitting, or urinating, chronic sore throat, stomach upset, and headache. So parents, when you see those symptoms in your children, you want to pay attention. Also, mental health disorders, just like eating disorder, personality disorder, behavioral changes, depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, kids who are scared of the dark. There is so many things that you have to pay attention to. So at this point, I know we went over because this is just so many different areas and so much information. So I just want to say thank you for listening.
We want to continue the discussion till it comes to a point.
Yes.
Ms. Donna.
Yeah, we're okay, Marynell.
We can go a little bit. We can go a little bit more.
And I want to say to the guests that just spoke, just to even come on and share your story. We thank you for that. And then you turned around and you're pouring back into your community. So that's another blessing. So thank you. And yes, this topic, we just need, I think we need to cover parenting. I think we just need to include more parenting forums, because at the end of the day, on all the different levels, you it's the amazing thing is we all had to go to driver's ed just to even drive a car. But then we have these human lives that we're responsible for, and there's absolutely no training. So it's trial and error. And then so we're causing so much unnecessary harm to these children, and then look at the lifetime of healing that's needed. This is not something like, you can just like, oh, that happened. It's a lifetime now of healing. So I definitely believe that we need more parenting. We need better parents. And in this age where parenting now is turned over to social media, to TikTok and Instagram, um, because it keeps that child quiet. But
So let me just wrap up by talking about some preventions. You can take steps to protect your child from exploitation and child abuse, as well as prevent child abuse in your own home, neighborhood, or community. The goal is really to provide safe, stable, nurturing relationships for children. Somebody said it only takes one adult to care about a child for a child to do well in school and all around. One caring adult. Offer your child love and attention. Nurture your child. Listen and be involved in his or her life to develop good communication. Like what I always say, later on in life, as your child grow up to be a teenager, the conversation is going to be difficult. But what you need to do as parents, and I'm really encouraging that, is talk about the everyday things in life. When they are 7 and 8 and 9 and 4 and 5, you talk about the weather, you talk about, what they're going to eat for dinner, what they're preparing, where you want to go on vacation, where you want to spend Saturday morning. So you develop that conversation with your child. So then when you need to talk about the hard stuff, you already know how to communicate. It's not now you're going to learn how to communicate and talk about the hard stuff. You want to develop communication about the easy things, the regular things. Encourage your child to tell you about their problems. We have a period of time when our children are very young, up until the age of 10, 11. Guess what? We, the parents, mom and dad, caregivers, grandmas, auntie, you are their audience. You have that period of time to teach your children what is right, what is wrong, what your expectation is, what you are proud of them about. Because when they reach teenage years and they are starting to do what teenagers do, find themselves, think that you don't know anything. I don't know how much degree you have behind your name, but your kid is going to tell you, Ma, Dad, you don't know nothing. You don't know what you're talking about. That is going to happen. But if you prepare them, and when you were their audience and you lay down the foundation of what your family expectation is, when they become teenagers, that storm is going to be a little easier to ride out, because they're going to remember some foundation you said. But if you're going to show up on the scene as a parent to teach right or wrong at 13 and 14 and 15, you might be successful, but it's going to be very difficult. So you want to develop that, because at teenagers, guess what? Their friends is their audience. That's why at that point, you who knew everything before, and you get those cards at Christmas time and Valentine and Mother's Day and Father's Day was mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, auntie, auntie. All of a sudden, I don't know anything. All of a sudden, you don't know nothing. You just don't understand. Because at that point, you are no longer the audience. It's their friends are their audience. So that's when you start to be like a parent, but more like a coach. You're coming alongside, because you had your opportunity when everything was mommy and daddy and auntie and grandma. That's when you were to put all your energy into what you want your family moral compass to look like, right?
Mhm.
So you want to
Right.
encourage the child to tell you their problems. And it's at that age, who stole my lunch? Who stole this lunch? You know, just the little things on the playground. You want to talk about those things. A supportive family environment and social network can foster your child's self-esteem and a sense of self-worth.
And
Please,
also know your friends, your children's friends and their family, who your children is
absolutely,
around. That is also
absolutely.
important. But there was a program in Brooklyn I used to work at, where they start doing parenting at before the child is born, and they will follow the parent until the child by school age. And
Right.
during that time, they give a lot of good materials that the parent could use to help them through that more crucial developmental stage, which is 0 to 6 years old. Um, so I don't know if they still have it in Brooklyn, but I know we was the only one at the time, but they close too.
They do still have a lot of programs for especially up until like 5 years old and school age. But again, parents have to know about it and they have to check in. In New York, they do. I'm not sure about the other states. Don't respond in anger. If you feel overwhelmed or out of control, take a break. Believe me, I know it sounds cliche, counting 1 to 10, but it works. Taking a breather works. Walking away and sitting in the bathroom for 5 minutes or in your powder room or wherever you want to go, it takes the edge off and it gives you the opportunity to make a different decision. If Will Smith had taken 5 minutes, he wouldn't have been in the problem he is today. One thing I am very big on is emotional management. It's
Right.
important for us to be able to manage our emotions, even when we might be in the right. We need to manage our emotions because that will save us and save our children from a lifetime of issues. So if you feel overwhelmed or out of control, take a break. Don't not take your anger out on your child. Talk to someone. Maybe look at a funny video, say a prayer, do something, but do not take your anger out on your child. Walk away. And please be mindful that when you discipline out of anger, when you discipline out of corporal punishment, you are teaching your child that when they are frustrated, when they're angry, they're gonna resort to violence because that's what you're teaching them. A while ago, when Beverly mentioned sometime when we take away something, don't hit, don't do this, we have to replace something. And that's what parents do. When they don't replace their anger with walking away, I'm angry, I'm gonna walk away, I'm gonna take a break. So this is what happens. Your child is seeing that you're out of control because you're mad. Mom is mad, so they're gonna smack. So how is it that your child gonna know when my friend or somebody in school do something that makes me mad? I'm gonna take a break. How am I gonna know that? I don't see that demonstrated in my family. I don't see that demonstrated in my space. So what I'm gonna do? So parents who are abusive to children, who yell and scream and throw things and do all of that. This is what you're teaching your child. But then these are same parent. Like it's so funny. I've sit in front of parents and they're literally telling me, "Oh, I don't know why my daughter is doing this. I don't know why my son is doing it." I'm just looking at them. I'm like, they're doing what you do. But for some reason, parents think because they're grown, what they're doing is okay. Because you're a parent, what you're doing is okay. But because that's a child, they're not supposed to do the same thing you're doing. But actuality, they are learning from you.
Mhm.
And that's how it's perpetuated. So it's all about really taking a break, taking the temperature down, and making a better decision. Having a resource person that you could call your mom, your sister, your friend. You know what? James is really getting on my nerves right now. Take a break because it's going to make the difference between you hurting your child, having your child have a lifelong of low grades in school, poor mental health, eating disorders, It's a lot. Child abuse causes a lot, and it costs a lot of money in the long run to even address these problems. And we could see they don't get addressed. It's like therapy is lifetime. It takes a lifetime because it's not really a cure, it's managing it at this point. Being able to function with all the mental stress that it causes. So I think I will end here.
Amazing, amazing. We're gonna give individuals a chance to give a last minute spill because we definitely went over the time, but we don't like to stop when we're making such big impact on our viewers and individuals. This is where the message need to come across, and that is our purpose here this evening. So anyone would like to add? Any of our listeners? I know Dr. Adams said she had to run.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Is Dr. Adams in there?
She left. She left.
Was someone else talking?
So is someone else?
Go ahead, Beverly.
Okay, so everyone did a wonderful job. One of the things I heard was we need to have more of these. So next month is actually, we have Infant Mental Health Week coming up in May. So perhaps that gives us another opportunity to talk about children and talk to parents about that. So hopefully,
Oh, absolutely. Well, we could have it more on children mental health, so it would be more narrow on something specific, more information.
Yes. Good. So Donna, we're counting on both of these ladies next month to give us
to volunteer. I can't say it and not volunteer. So.
All right. Sounds good. Anyone else? Our guests, would you like to say something, Miss Konotny?
Well, thank you for having me. You know, it was a great topic. I think it's something we can carry on to mental health, but they also intertwine with it. You know, it has an impact on your mental stage and how you view the world as a whole. So I think it would be a good idea, mental health, for next time you guys meet.
Thank you.
And I'm just glad. You're welcome.
Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure that when people can share their personal views. We have the experts and we also have people giving their personal life story. It's just so powerful because it's not, you know, you read a book every day and you get statistics and you get numbers every day, but to actually feel the passion, the compassion for others and know, look, you're not by yourself. It means a lot to our viewers.
Yes, and that was very brave, sharing your personal story with us this evening. And I just want to talk on behalf of all of us. We do love you and we do care.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Miss Donna, I'm gonna give me 1 second. Ja. Anybody else would like to say anything?
Sybil.
Yeah,
it's your turn.
I was gonna say real quick. Growing up, my mom never ever encouraged overnight sleepovers. I used to be so upset because I wanted to go out with my girlfriends and sleep. Like, I mean, we didn't do this kind of stuff that's happening now because we were so terrified of our parents. You know, growing up in the islands is very different. You get instruction, you do what you're told. Otherwise, you know what you get. But now with the young mothers that we have, it's like they're always looking for a reason to get a break. And then there's a lot of the sleepovers and a lot of what happens at these forums. You know, so listening to you tonight, Marynell, it's really, really, really really interesting information. It's really, really good. So I'm so glad you took the time to come on. Thank you so much.
And what I would like to end on 2 notes and then pass it on. It's 2 things. One is that when we talk about child abuse, I've been listening to everything this evening, and we're basically talking about child abuse, adult development, because it is what you learn as a child. Like as an educator, we talk about, you know, these kids who I'm teaching today are responsible for me tomorrow. And I'm listening to each individual, just the roller coaster and the wave. What we do as a child is what's going to impact us along that road to adulthood. So therefore, it is our job to protect those that are coming up, to educate them, to protect them, to inform them, and all those good things. And I think tonight we talked about a program. We have some professionals. We could talk about a program where these young mothers need to come to and get that aid, that assistance, that education, that piece that is missing. That's one thing. And I as a woman, I know earlier someone shout out the Smith story. So I just want to take power and privilege and honor to shout out Miss Katanji Brown Jackson. Right.
Yeah.
I remember 3 weeks ago, we was on here with some judges, Judge Anthony and Judge Meyer, and they were talking and asking us just to hold the fort down for this lady. And
Judge
you know,
Nix.
Judge Nix, and we did get good outcome. We also had another judge that was appointed also in Miami. And we also had something else happen about the Virgin Island passport thing. So, and it's also another sister who brought this out. So we're doing some wonderful, wonderful thing, ladies. So keep up the good work. Truly, truly appreciate and embrace each other.
Yeah, man. You know, takeaways from this evening, quite a few, so people understand that, you know, child abuse is emotional, sexually, physically, could be neglect, could be medically. So we didn't get into all the areas, right? But recognizing signs from the child, just watching how different they are, how secluded they are, things like that. We as parents have a big responsibility. So I think we need more training. We need more parenting training, parenting classes. We can't do trial and error on lives because we can't. There's no do over. So we got to do better. So we're gonna seek and see what resources are out there for parenting, even before you have a child, if you know what to expect. But there's nothing like the true when you're going through it. But you know, we need to be able to discipline thoughtfully, discipline more with love, and not the hate and the anger and all of that, right? So we need to encourage with love and starting early. You know, not we can't wait till they're teenagers, and know that we are also, they're watching us, they're hearing us, they're seeing us, they're listening. So we can't be surprised later on, why are you doing this? I saw you do it. So we have to take some responsibility and then try to be better. Know who you leave your kids with. Don't just send them off to any and everybody. Have more patience. Understand that any abuse is a lifetime healing. All right, so together we can be better. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I just wanted to say, give thanks and praise as usual for another day that we're here to talk and bring awareness to how we can be better and how we can help you to be better, and we all can be better. Moms or aunties or cousins or family, for men and women, right? This is not a gender biased show. It just seems that all the women always, you know, rule and run things. But we want to thank everyone and parent with love. Learn to parent with love. I know it takes a lot. Do that breathing, do that, you know, that 5 minutes that Marynell talked about. But you got to learn to parent with love, because the heartache trail that it leaves for a lifetime and hurt people, and this cycle is just continuing and continuing. So we got we can stop it today. All right. Thank you, everyone. Be blessed. And until next.
So we won't be available next weekend, but join us on the weekend of the 23rd to
Yes.
celebrate my birthday. Come with your drinks and your glasses ready.
Yeah, man. All right, everyone. Thank you all. And God bless everyone. Until next time, see you
Okay.
on Caribbean Diaspora Vibes.
Bye-bye.